Doctors and nurses of Reddit. Have you ever witnessed a couple have a child that was obviously not the father's? If so, what happened? I worked labor and delivery. Had a very young mother come in, accompanied by her parents. She was just 12 to 13 and parents looked stuffy and kept telling her she'd had an abortion. She was too young, etc. Her mother was silent the whole time but leaked tears for her constantly. While she labored, I received a call from a very young boy who said he was her boyfriend. His trembly voice explained that her father wouldn't come to the hospital. I explained that I couldn't give out information, but he could talk to her afterward. I went in, told her he had called, and she showed me a picture of him. He was white, straight red hair, pimply and tiny, the runt of the litter. About an hour later, her phys ed teacher stopped by to check on her, which I thought was odd. We didn't get many teachers checking on students. He was as opposite of a boyfriend as he could get. Tall, very muscular, beautiful smile, and rich, chocolate brown skin. The girl's father accompanied her to the delivery room. Odd, but okay. The more she pushed, the louder she cried. In between, she kept saying sorry daddy. Finally, out slid a very beautiful, chocolate brown baby boy. I thought her father was going to pass up, sat on my delivery room floor. I did my usual "it's a boy" and said nothing else. I handed him off to a nursery nurse and got out a chair. The new mom said "I'm sorry daddy" over and over again. Her mom, now frowned up, came to see the baby, took one look, started asking God for forgiveness, and left. I sent her dad home a short bit later, admonishing him to react at home, not here. I set up a time for our counselor to meet with him before I left. After talking to new mom, she admitted her gym teacher had been giving her special treatment. I explained sex to her and she said she'd only kissed the BFF, but had stayed after school to be with her gym teacher. I'm state mandated to report child ps, so I did. 2 weeks later, with her world shattered, her baby was given up for adoption. I wish her the best. Of note, this was 1989. Ugh. I've been reading this thread every now and then today, and this one is seriously one of the worst ones I've read. It seems like the poor thing didn't even realize that something bad had happened to her. I hope she's okay and not suffering too much. My husband and I were visiting our friends who just had a baby. We are the godparents and we were standing in the hallway talking to both sets of grandparents. Well, apparently the hospital has a rule that only 5 visitors may be present in the hallway, but the security guard had let all 6 of us in for some reason and we didn't realize it. This nasty nurse comes up to us, notes that there are 6 of us, tells us someone will have to leave immediately, and then turns to my husband and says, "Oh, are you the daddy?" Without missing a beat, he says, "That's what we're all trying to figure out here." She gets a look of horror on her face and backs away. Well, he's got that dad jokes ready to go. Lol. Worked in the army hospital on Fort Lewis. A woman came in for belly pain and we found out and told her she was 10 weeks pregnant. The husband at the bedside started laughing, grabbed his coat and left the room explaining to us that he had been in Afghanistan until 3 weeks prior. He looked back at her and just said, "Well, that's that Brittany." I always liked how classily he left her while she just silently stared off into space. When my son was born they took my blood and his for a paternity test. My wife flipped. The nurse explained that if my son came back not mine they would have to ship her off to a local civilian hospital per whatever regulation they had to follow army hospital. She still talks about it to this day. I had a vasectomy. While chatting with the doctor, he told me about another patient. This guy had 3 kids and came in for the snip because he and his wife decided they were done having children. The doc opened up his sack and found nothing to snip. This guy was born without the ability to have any children. The poor doctor had to explain to him what happened. Imagine finding that out that way. This is hardcore. This is going to give me nightmares. 23andMe posts a 25% off coupon 2 hours after this post goes up. One of my favorite cousins just did 23andMe with her dad and discovered that they were not biologically related at all. This is especially horrible because my aunt, her mother, is one of the most ridiculously zealous and judgmental people I have ever met. She screams at the baby cousins when they don't behave perfectly. She literally threw a pocket Bible at a woman in a grocery store after the woman was on the phone and said "ps" or something. And she likes to send me unsolicited long letters about God's plan for my life. Surprisingly, her husband is the most fun and laid back person I've ever met. He did not deserve this, or her. The guilt is real. I have an aunt who I suspect cheated on my uncle and had a daughter who looks nothing like him. Anytime this woman and I are in the same room, from the time I was 14 or so, she brings up birth control. Mind you, I was very awkward and not having sex in high school, and now I'm 28 with a husband and 2-year-old, and she still brings up birth control and God in the same sentence. I've always speculated it's her guilt over something. I learned about it, a paternal superfecundation from a friend of mine. She is a 5'0" blonde white girl introducing me to her 6'5" black twin. Surprises for everyone that day. That's the term for the twins in my elementary school. They were born the same day, as twins, and raised as brothers, but one was black as night and the other white with blonde hair. Not in the hospital, but a friend and his GF were on again/off again, and she got pregnant. She swears it's his. He wants a paternity test. He moves in with her and her mom. She has the baby. Take the test. Test is taking a while to come back. Him and his family are over the moon with the baby. Kinda forget about it. Mentions it to GF's mom one day and she says, oh yeah, she didn't tell you? Came back a while ago. Totally your baby. Awesome. All is well. A few months later they're moving out and he finds the test in a box. Not his baby. Eater he left. Tried to stay in the baby's life, but she wouldn't let him. He finds the test in a box. Why would you keep the damn test? Oh man, I'm so late to this thread. I used to work in the newborn nursery at a hospital. We got the babies right from delivery, cleaned them up, footprinted them, checked vitals, etc. Dads usually came in with the newborns. This dad comes in with this baby. Dad is white, mom is white, baby is very obviously not white. The dad was very quiet standing next to this baby, watching us clean it up. He says quietly, I don't think this is my baby. You could tell he was absolutely devastated. We advised him not to sign the birth certificate until he was sure. Not sure what happened after we sent the baby back out to mom, but I felt awful for the guy. I can feel his sadness through the text. Right? Like he just muttered it to himself accidentally loud enough to be heard. Hopefully he didn't sign the birth certificate. I want to give him a hug. It must be so exciting to think you're going to be a father, and then to have that all taken away. My best friend was dating a girl and knocked her up. They got engaged and planned to get married right after the baby was born. There were about 10 of us in the waiting room waiting for her to crank out the baby. It was essentially her parents were in another state, some of her friends, and some of ours. After sitting there for about 2 hours, he walks out with a smirk on his face and says let's go. We all thought something horrible had happened. Her friends ask how the baby is, and he said fine, but black. He motioned for us to go, so we followed him. In the parking garage, he tells us to follow him to his apartment, then sends me a text asking I could put him up for a while. We literally moved him out of his apartment and into my spare bedroom in like an hour tops. Her parents didn't know who to be mad at. The confusion on their faces when he told them the baby was black was priceless. Wow. Till it's not only in American TV shows where all the friends wait at the hospital for the baby to be delivered. I didn't realize that it happened in real life. I was in the waiting room when my best friend's son was born. It was just me waiting. None of their other friends or family showed up. I felt kind of dumb with the balloons and whatnot, but I like to be around for the people I care for. Maybe I thought I was supposed to be there because of the sitcoms. I almost died having my baby. Had it not been for my sister, my husband would have been alone with our newborn, asking himself how he was going to be a single father. I was in there for 4 hours, should have been 25 minutes. She advocated for our baby, changed diapers, assured him it would be okay. You're a good friend. Keep being there for your friends. Editing and breastfeeding makes English hard. Editing because this is my highest rated comment. I hemorrhaged with my first kid. Nothing some uterus nail scraping can't fix. Hemorrhaged again with my second. Had a cervical tear. I almost bled to death. I lost over half of my blood volume. Please donate blood. There is no replacement. I'll forever be grateful for both of my donors. I needed 2 transfusions. I was blood typing a newborn once. Mom was an O. Baby was AB. Which is more or less not possible. I immediately panicked. Because Jesus God, they mixed up the babies. Someone has the wrong baby. We are gonna get sued. They're gonna have to genetic test the entire nursery. What if they subpoena me for being the idiot who discovered the problem? I don't have insurance. What if they sue me? After repeating the test 3 times, I called the floor and told them that they'd either drawn the wrong baby's blood or they'd switched babies because mom couldn't be the baby's mother. Lol no. It was a donor egg. The red row matched fine. Everyone was where they were supposed to be. Oh god, my heart, though. You'd think they might mention something important like that. I work in anesthesia. One of my colleagues had someone vaginally deliver a baby with Steve's lunchbox tattooed above the births. The ob/gyn said to the father after the delivery, "Congratulations, Steve." The guy replied that his name was indeed not Steve. Don't know if that counts. jaeann5 have cheated on my soap but now I'm terrified. Thanks Reddit. Edit. I'm female and a pregnant one. Obviously. My wife is an RN/hospital supervisor. Code yellow is the code over the intercom for security/large male nurses needed. It rarely ever happens, but every now and then over the speakers you hear a code yellow, labor and delivery. You know the reason. From reading other subs, I'd guess sometimes it's also family grandmas to be who won't leave the delivery room or labor ward. When my sister had a baby, my mother jumped in the way of the guys transferring the baby to NICU and wouldn't let them move. She demanded to see the doctors, the nurses, my sister, the admin staff. My plan was to lie to both sides of the family about my due date and be home with the baby before they knew. You can register as a confidential patient. Then even if they call the hospital looking for you, the hospital can't tell them you are even there. Just as a backup in case they figure it out. I used to work with a guy whose wife was pregnant. Near time for delivery, everyone at our place of business had a big party with gifts, money, etc. So big day comes. Water breaks. They get in car to go to hospital. She breaks the news on the way there it's not his. The kid is another race. And if he could just drop her off at the hospital and then leave, that would be great. He took a few days off work. Found a new apartment. Moved out. Filed divorce etc. He called into work and told someone what happened. News spread pretty fast. All congratulations cards, etc. were cleaned up and thrown away. Everyone was very sensitive to his pain. Except, somehow, I don't know how, I did not get the news. So on his first day back, I walked into the office he shared with 6 to 7 other guys and said, hey daddy-o, how's fatherhood so far? Getting any sleep? Got some pictures? Let's see the little tyke. He slowly lifted his head to look at me with a painful look. The room was dead silent. One of his workmates stood up, grabbed my arm, and walked me out of the room, shushing me. What happened? I asked. Did it die? What's the problem? When he told me I about died myself. I still feel bad for the dude and it's been 30 years. Hey daddy ol mayo, nice one. Hey daddy-o, rev up those fryers. I'm not a nurse. My professor was an L&D nurse and she once saw a man running between 2 delivery rooms. Both women he had impregnated went into labor and gave birth the same day. Supposedly the one he was married to was angry because the woman he cheated with was impregnated after the wife, but had her kid 10 minutes before the wife. L&D is apparently the most drama-filled section of hospitals. My so is planning to be a nurse and he's going to work in L&D/neonatal this year, and I'm excited to hear any dramatic stories. This happened when we went in to wait for my sister to give birth. Both families were there and it was super awkward. Fortunately he was not even dating either girl that was in there having his baby. My grandmother was a nurse. Once she was assisting with delivering a baby and the ostensible father commented that the child looked good for a premature baby. Without thinking my grandmother told the truth. That baby is not premature. So I guess I know where I get my social obliviousness from. I don't think that's social obliviousness. Like, there's no obligation to sit there and consider how someone could possibly be lying, so you could cover it up for them. If their dumbass lies about something that easily blown open, they deserve to get it blown open. Reminds me of that joke. Interviewer, what would you say is your biggest flaw? Candidate, my biggest flaw is probably that I'm too honest. Interviewer, oh, that doesn't sound like much of a flaw at all. Candidate, well I don't give up's what you think. A coworker's aunt just found out her dad wasn't actually her dad. So she was really big into genealogy and had mapped out her family tree as far as she could go. She took one of those ancestry DNA tests about 2 months ago, and her father's side didn't line up with what she was expecting. In fact, she didn't recognize a single name that she was matched with paternally. She casually asked her dad if he knew any of the names, and he recognized the surname of the maintenance man at the apartment complex where he and his wife aunt's mom lived shortly after they had gotten married. Claimed he was a lousy repairman who always flirted with his wife, etc. Aunt's mom had passed away a few years ago, so she decided to not tell her dad the news. My mom's friend knew her parents had a third child and gave it away, so she and her sister used an online DNA test to find them. They ended up learning they have different dads. This just very recently happened in my family too. My aunt discovered that she has a different dad than her siblings, and that she has a half-sister with a different mom. Such a weird thing to find out when you are in your 60s. It gave me the opportunity to reassure my own children that they will never get a surprise like that. Although I can't say for sure that their dad doesn't have unknown offspring floating around out there somewhere. Had a couple come in. One of them was pregnant. Neither knew. Judging from all the screaming, this information was poorly received. Sounds about like my life. Found out in our first divorce hearing that she was pregnant. The judge wouldn't grant the divorce since her child was conceived during our marriage. Judge even went as far as making me wait 9 months till the baby was born and take a DNA test to prove the child wasn't mine. Even though I'm a woman. Edit. I feel like I should edit this post with the entire story. After almost 3 years of marriage to my wife, I caught her cheating on me with the current father to her child, late December 2016. By the first of the year we both decided to work on our marriage and try to put everything behind us. The guy she cheated on me with was the fiance of one of my best friends. Well, by the end of January 2017, she was still keeping her relationship with him going, so I left her and moved completely out of our house the night that I found out. I filed for divorce later that week, and around the beginning of March was our first divorce hearing. In court, the judge asked if any children we born into the marriage. We both said no. He then asked if any children were conceived in the marriage. I said no, and she agreed there had been. He then told us he could not grant the divorce since a child had been conceived and paternity had not yet been established. The entire 9 months that she carried that child, she still continued to tell me how much she missed me, yada yada yada. Even went as far as telling me the main reason I was with him was so we could have our own child together. Believe me, I wasn't idiotic enough to fall for her tricks. After 2 more court appearances and a paternity test, our divorce was granted at the beginning of this month. It was a long journey, and boy am I glad it is over. I really hate to laugh at that, but the last part killed me. I'm sorry you had to go through that. Nurse here. Once had a couple come in. Just them. The father was black and the mother was white. The father was so involved, so ecstatic about him becoming a father for the second time with this woman. Nothing really seemed off until she started pushing. The baby girl came out completely white, blonde hair and blue eyes. Usually black babies come out a little pale, but this was just straight out white. We had to escort the father out for fear of him becoming violent, but he just sat outside the room, on the ground with his face in his hands. That was one of the saddest moments I think I've ever seen with a father, besides stillbirth. Odd thing after though, the mom didn't want the baby and wanted nothing to do with the father, probably out of guilt. So she left the responsibility of this baby and their other 2-year-old boy to this man, who didn't even question taking on this child. My brother was doing his OB-GYN rotation. His story is that in the first birth he assisted the woman had her husband leave the room. Seems odd these days, but he had the husband step out for the comfort of the patient. The baby is delivered, and the color was not even close. Lily white parents and very black baby. She wants him to stay to talk to her husband who is about to come back, and he bails on the whole situation. She was playing the odds all the way to the end. Seems to be a theme in this thread. Had a college buddy whose fiancée was pregnant. They were the perfect couple. Both had just over a year with great careers starting out. Everything was butterflies and rainbows. Fast forward to the delivery room. There and out comes a very black baby. He's quite the pale redhead, and she's a blonde/blue eyes Texas girl. He made sure everyone was okay, waited for her parents to arrive, and left without saying a word. He moved all his stuff out of the house while she was in the hospital and cut off all communications with her. Just walked out of their lives in the most stone cold act I'd ever seen. They were together for 9 years, and he just left cold turkey. She tried to contact him at his job a few times, but he quickly moved up the ladder and eventually got a job in another city. He told me once that he took solace in the fact that her family had already dropped about 10k in a wedding that never happened. Edited typo. He's a gent for waiting for her parents. Yeah, I'll admit I don't see myself being able to wait. That said, I can't even imagine being in that situation real class, and I'm sure someone with that fortitude will land on their feet. If someone wrongs you like that, You want to leave the situation cleanly and blamelessly. People are going to scrounge around for the reason someone did you dirty. Don't give them any. That's a general life lesson that will do you good every time someone is indisputably pissed to you. Be the bigger person. Protect yourself. Get the hell out of the situation. Separate from the person who harmed you. But don't lash out. Don't retaliate and don't give them the satisfaction of being able to say you deserved it, based on your behavior at the end. You will sleep a lot better at night for having behaved with class than you ever will for having gotten in a few licks at someone, no matter how much they deserve it. And I love that it was just over. Some things don't require or benefit from any more discussion or energy. Know what those things are and cut your losses. My son came out and looked really tan. My ex-girlfriend and I are pretty white. I thought for a second she cheated on me. We are now separated for different reasons unrelated to our child. And he is pasty white as hell. Got one heck of a suntan in the uterus though. It's funny how some kids can get some random gene that neither parent shows. My oldest son is ridiculously dark. The whole family is blindingly white, 3 other siblings, but he looks Hispanic almost in skin color. Paternity has been established on him, no questions there. He's just our bronzed little man who is allowed to see sunlight without 3 feet of sunblock on, since he doesn't sizzle up the second the sun hits him. The little show off. Pale ass Irish guy here, well, Irish descent anyway. My son got my wife's skin coloring, which comes from her grandmother. He looks exactly like me, except when he goes in the sun he turns brown instead of pink. I'm so jealous. Not a doctor, but a distant cousin of mine definitely has children that don't belong to the father. My cousin was adopted as an infant and was essentially a crack baby. She struggled with some developmental issues and has a low IQ compared to most, but can still live on her own with little to no issues. She, a white woman, married a Latino guy, really dark brown skin, several years ago, and they had a son together who has dark hair, dark skin, and dark eyes. He is easily identified as their son. The real trouble happens years later. Her husband, who we'll call Javier, has some IQ issues of his own. Just a little slow when it comes to tasks and reasoning. Anyway, Javier is in the military and gets deployed internationally for about 6 months. When he comes home, his wife is 4 months, do the math. He still believes the baby is his own, even after it's born with pale skin and blonde hair and blue eyes. If that wasn't bad enough, it happens again 2 years later with another baby. Same blonde hair and blue eyes. Everyone knows she slept with a different man, it was actually her high school boyfriend, but Javier still thinks the children are his. It's kind of sad, but at this point there's not much you can do. He has raised the kids as his own. Javier is a good man. Your cousin certainly isn't a good woman. Javier, I hate to break this to you, but these kids, you aren't the father. Yeah, I know, man. Wait, you know? Why do you constantly insist they are your kids? Dude, they are. He may have been your father, but he wasn't your daddy. I'm a nurse, but this didn't happen to me. Friend of mine got pregnant in high school. She claimed it was our local doctor's son's kid, so he agreed to deliver his grandchild for free. Child delivered and it was obviously half African American. Doctor's son and girl were both white. I think he still delivered it for free as he was relieved his 14-year-old son wasn't a dad. Edit. Forgotten apostrophe. The doctor didn't impregnate a teenager. It was supposedly his son's kid. It wasn't. LPT to avoid paying a 10k bill at the hospital. r/unethical if operatives. Edit. Forgot the S. I'm too young to have witnessed it, but back in the late 50s or 1960, my uncle had an affair with a woman who later divorced her husband and became his wife. She had 2 children with her first husband, or at least that was the official story that everyone maintained. However, it was extremely obvious, based on appearance, that the second of my aunt's 2 children, while married to her first husband, was my uncle's biological child. She looked nothing like my aunt's first husband or her older half-brother, and exactly like my uncle. As the years went by, the pretense was dropped and was never mentioned again.